Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is my third video, which is based on my students and my readers' questions. So in my previous videos I talked about what symbiotic autoethnography was, what autoethnographic data was, and how to collect autoethnographic data. So in this video I am hoping to talk about the potential ways of analyzing autoethnographic data, as this is the aspect of autoethnographic study which causes a lot of anxiety in my students. But before we start talking about analyzing autoethnographic data, let's just go back for a minute to the question, what is data in autoethnography? And as I mentioned in my previous video, in autoethnography, everything is regarded as data. Indeed, as Ellis and Bochner confirm, in autoethnography, where the researcher is the subject, the researcher's interpretation of the experience becomes the data. And this means that when it comes to autoethnographic research, what counts as data expands greatly, creating for researchers the difficulty of representing, presenting, analyzing their own experiences as data. So a particular complexity of working with autoethnographic data involves researchers combining, juxtaposing, and manipulating various fragments of data, which is also related to being omnipresent across all the experiences throughout times and spaces, as I describe in my symbiotic approach to autoethnography. So, as I also mentioned in my previous video, I also mentioned that conventional methods of data collection need to be reconsidered in the context of autoethnography, with a focus on discerning data rather than collecting data, where discerning is understood as a process of imaginative and creative techniques of recognizing relevant and potentially valuable fragments of experiences within this complex fabric of our researchers' life and our journeys that could contribute to a better understanding of the cultural phenomena under study. This process often offers limitless possibilities in the choice of data sources, making it possible to discern data not obtainable through more traditional ways of data collection. And yet, it also brings about some challenges of selecting a specific selection of data from all this multiplicity of field notes that might include, but are not limited to, our memories, feelings, experiences, dreams, photographs, various memorabilia, records of interviews with participants, entries from your reflexive journals and diaries, as well as researchers' reflections on relevant literature and theoretical perspectives, as you can see on the next slide. So here you can see that I distinguish two symbiotically connected layers of what might be considered as first possible sources of data. As you can see, this highlighted in the gray shaded areas in the middle of the diagram. And the second, more almost tangible forms of data discerned from these sources, and these are represented as gray text boxes. So even though the boundaries between these two sources and a representation of data will always remain blurred, and the categories within them fluid and overlapping. So despite this attempt to somehow streamline the process of discerning the data, the fragments of data often, what I call it, leak into each other. So let's now have a look at the ways this data can be analyzed. Now, to start this part of the discussion, I would like to mention that there is a similarity between painting a picture and working with autoethnographic data symbiotically. Since this analogy, in my view, serves as a helpful cognitive bridge to the key approach of working with autoethnographic data, a symbiosis of data and analysis. When looking at or creating a painting, we do not perceive each individual brushstroke separately, but appreciate the overall impression of the painting through the totality of its artistic features. In the same way, in autoethnography, the brushstrokes of data cannot be separated from the entire flow of researchers' interpretative analytical deliberations. And as discussed in my previous videos, the underlying tenets of autoethnography are shaped by a general rejection of highly structured approaches that advocate for clear demarcation between methods of data collection and data analysis. Instead, in symbiotic approach, the stages of generating and discerning data fuse with other aspects of research, prompting working with data in a simultaneous reflexive engagement with the interpretative analysis, evocative qualities, and political focus across these spatio-temporal dimensions of the researcher's experiences. Here I almost mentioned all 7 features of symbiotic autoethnography. Because indeed, writing symbiotic autoethnography is similar to painting a picture where colors, textures, media, they dissolve and imbricate to represent the painter's impression of a subject or a theme. So the issues associated with narrative data and its analysis remain contested in research circles and continue to be widely debated. Specifically in the field of autoethnographic studies, in particular the multiplicity of forms and types of autoethnographic data requires researchers to search continuously for new ways of its representation and analysis, which cross boundaries between data, data collection, data analysis, and representation, making it our goal, as LeBlanc mentioned, to craft a narrative that puts things in motion rather than capturing them in some still life. So to facilitate such weaving of method, data, and analytical interpretation, autoethnography uses a number of interconnected interpretative strategies, such as diffractive analysis, assemblage, rhizoanalysis, pastiche, bricolage, layered accounts, multivocal vignettes, epiphanies. And yet, although such abundance of approaches that push the boundaries of convention is becoming more wide-ranging in autoethnographic research, more traditional ways of working with autoethnographic data, such as thematic approach, phenomenological approaches, discourse analysis, to name just a few, they also remain popular choices in the arsenal of interpretative strategies. So what can symbiotic approach contribute to such already theoretically dense area related to the ways of presenting, analyzing autoethnographic data? Well, before trying to answer this question, it is worth emphasizing that, as I mentioned elsewhere, in terms of one-size-fits-all model for analyzing autobiographical data or autoethnographic data, there cannot be a cookbook containing a single recipe that would help autoethnographers to produce a delicious dish to be equally appreciated by everybody. And to rephrase a famous quote by Somerset Maugham about writing a novel, there are 3 rules to merging autoethnographic data with its analysis, but unfortunately no one knows what they are. So this is of course just a joke, but indeed, moving from fragments of autoethnographic data towards its interpretative analysis is far from being a straightforward process that can be completed flawlessly based on a set of prescribed procedures. Well, nevertheless, there are a couple of strategies that I would like to discuss in the next few slides, which I call symbiotic writing and analytical transenances. As discussed in my previous video, in symbiotic autoethnography, researchers' analytical interpretation of data cannot be separated from autoethnographic writing. So the emphasis of symbiotic approach to working with autoethnographic data is on amalgamation of meaning making with fragments of data in a continuous flow of the research process. So as a result, the processes of discerning data and analysis intertwine to create what I call symbiotic writing, which involves simultaneous writing as data and writing about data, providing this possibility of a more holistic, reflexive understanding of cultural phenomena under study. So as one of the ways of data analysis in autoethnography, I suggest using the data discerned from multiple sources as a symbiosis, for example, of vignettes. Well, I call them flashbacks in my own work. Autoethnographic micro-narratives, which is your actual autoethnographic writing. Extracts from your reflexive diary. The snippets from the interview records, if you use participants, which all of them are interspersed with the fragments of your theoretical deliberations. So essentially, your autoethnography would contain traces of assemblage, layered account, thematic analysis, and you might choose other ways that already exist within the qualitative analysis in terms of the ways of analyzing data to mix and match to what is better suited to your research question. For example, using layered account, as mentioned by Ronai, would give you the desired flexibility to manipulate the fragments of data in a way which allows it to intertwine with, disrupt, and dislocate your autoethnographic narrative in a deliberate attempt to provoke new questions and redirect the flow of discussion. As proposed by Ronai, layered account as an ethnographic reporting technique has the capacity to embody a theory of consciousness and to become a method of reporting in one stroke. So within the layered account, you can use what I call flashbacks, or your vivid recollection of events, relations, or feelings that would create a more dynamic representation of your experiences of the phenomena under study. You might want to use even a different font for these flashbacks that would also penetrate the traditional neat writing conventions with a disorderly and distracting interference, and that is one of the signifiers of symbiotic writing. Furthermore, your engagement with the process of reflexivity would help you to enhance your symbiotic writing with extracts from your reflexive diary, which you would probably maintain throughout the entire research process. These extracts will also intersperse with the other data to contribute to this multivocality of your autoethnographic journey that is based on, as Nigel Short put it, experiences of me with others within a context. You might want to make them also recognizable by using paragraphs of text surrounded by a border, or make them look differently within your text using some other editing tools. So the participants' voices will also form part of your symbiotic writing if you do use the participants, contributing to the ambiguity and almost disorientation of your journey, as their voices will merge and intertwine in your joint polyvocal search for the meaning of that cultural phenomena that you're trying to investigate. So in this sense, symbiotic writing would allow you to attune to multiple voices towards a great understanding of the complexity of the research subject. In terms of deploying some elements of thematic analysis, similarly, Saint-Pierre, for example, mentioned that I was concerned about analyzing autoethnographic data through brute coding, labeling, and categorizing into themes. So, thus, in line with symbiotic approach, I searched for more subtle ways of data organization, which prompted me to use fluid and momentary notion of what I called analytical transenances instead of themes, instead of traditional themes, where the former could be continuously constructed, deconstructed, and refined by the fragments of data to accommodate transmuting views at different moments of writing. The transiences, though roughly shaped by the subject of your study, they do not need to be predefined, but can be allowed to almost emerge gradually from the body of your interaction with the data and the literature, somehow resembling Michelangelo's sculpturing technique of gradually revealing the figure from the block, rather as if it were slowly emerging from the surface of a vessel of water. That is a quote from Vasari and Hamsall here. So the analytical transiences will create an illusion of permanence through holding together the mosaic pieces of the data to allow the emerging patterns to be captured in their momentary stillness before they can go shattered again in kaleidoscopic impermanence of ever-changing patterns of your thinking, spaces, voices, utterances, and behaviors. Another point to mention is that symbiotic engagement with writing as data and writing as analysis should be used to subjectivize the research subject rather than to objectify it. As in the context of symbiotic autoethnography, as Dillett mentioned it, to know reality means to participate in it. So as you start wandering through your data, trying to construct a steady line of reasoning, don't get concerned or anxious if your writing keeps discarding any generalizable significance, simply because symbiotic writing has nothing to do with signifying. But it has to do, in the words of Deleuze and Guattari, it has to do with surveying, mapping even realms that are yet to come. Thus, the symbiotic and the symbiosis of your data within temporary transiences will move your analysis through, across, between, and beyond the indivisible flow of data, constantly promising but ultimately deferring any certainty of the conclusions. So really speaking, this is all I want to talk to you about in terms of ways of analyzing data. You will find more information and practical examples in my book on symbiotic autoethnography, because it's practically impossible to describe the whole process within these short sets of videos that I provide. But please continue to message me and provide comments and questions so I can answer all these in my next video. So Thank you again for listening, and I hope to see you again soon on my channel. If you're here for the first time and if you want to find out more, please subscribe to this channel and also follow me on Twitter. Thank you again for watching, and good luck with your autoethnographic research. Goodbye.